Welcome back, everyone. Our mission today, should we choose to accept it, is to get the hydraulic pump put onto the back of X231. If we can manage that, we'll have everything sealed up and ready for primer here. Once again, pump goes in this area right here, is driven off the back of the live power shaft, and it has a floating splined coupling between the live power shaft and the input shaft to the pump. I've got both setups laid out on the bench. The 2-piece is the prototype, the 3-piece is the production. Quite a few differences between them, although they do accomplish the same task. The prototype pieces, once again, were all mild steel, and that accounts for the profound spline wear that is evident on all sides. And the production collar that goes onto the live power shaft is quite a bit bulkier, quite a bit heftier than the prototype. So they definitely did increase the amount of metal here. Plus, these have been hardened to an extent. You can still work them. They're not like bearing race hard, but they are a lot more wear resistant than these clearly handmade prototype pieces. And the setup is quite simple. This piece fits the live power shaft, and this piece was made to fit the input of the pump. One slides into the other, and they float right in between and transmit the power. The principle is the same for the production pieces. This piece fits the live power shaft, but then they run this independent sleeve over the outside of it. The next piece is sized to match whatever happens to be on the front of the hydraulic pump. Some production tractors had the 6-spline input like this. Others had a straight shaft with a single key, just like the live power shaft. So you would just put whatever adapter you needed into the sleeve to match what is on either end of it. So this was actually a much more versatile setup. The problem we have today, though, the prototype setup is way too worn to even repair. So it's less work to modify this production 3-piece design than it is to recreate or save this 2-piece. And you can see there's quite a bit of length difference between the two. The production setup is longer. So we need to decide which of these 3 pieces we are going to machine down to occupy that much shorter space between the back of the live power shaft in the prototype and the front of the hydraulic pump. We have about 1/8 of an inch that we need to take out of this 3-piece coupling. And testing the fit of the collar on the live shaft, I've decided this is the piece I'm going to remove the material from because so much of it sticks off the end of the shaft and is not being used anyway. And both of the collars have these feet at the base of the splines that come up against each edge of the sleeve. And the collars pretty much come up against each other inside the sleeve. So that means however much material I remove from this collar, I'm also going to have to remove from this sleeve. Otherwise, okay, it doesn't want to go together. Otherwise, the feet are just going to be keeping everything the same distance apart regardless. So what comes off of one has to come off of the other. I've got the collar in first, and we've still got to take it easy because it's still an interrupted cut. So it's just taking the splines off. We haven't got down to where we are solid cut all the way around. We're just about to the bottoms of them. So 2-3 more passes, I think we'll have it cleaned up. Awfully rattly on an interrupted cut. You feel it in the lathe more than hear it on this one. Small bites though, we don't want to take an edge off of the cutter. It looks like we're getting shinier though, so that tells me we're getting down to the bottoms of some of them. Yeah. See, we're a good cut there down to the bottom. We got just a shadow of that one left. So next cut, it should clean right up. That rumbles out of it now. You can see we're cutting a clean swipe all the way across. When it squeaks like that, that means we're up against the shoulder, so we can take a little bit more aggressive of a cut now. Just finished taking the whole front of this right off. Get the chips off. This one's trimmed to length, and we've recreated the tapers at the leading ends of the splines. So this piece is done. And now it's the sleeve's turn. So here's how tall the collars both used to be. Here's how tall the modified collar is, and we have the sleeve to suit. But before we put any of those in, I wanted to just hang the pump on the back of the case so that I could make sure we have, let's see if we can get the light just right. Okay, good standoff between the end of the live power shaft and the end of the pump input shaft. And we have, I would say, close to an 1/8 inch right there. So that is plenty good. Now we can test fit the floating coupling. We don't need the key in yet. We're just throwing this stuff together to see how it fits, check in play, things like that. Sometimes it can be tricky to line the pump splines in. Oh, this one fell right in this time. All right. And if anyone's wondering, we've got a gasket in place under the pump. I know about all you can see is the end of the pump right now, but that is critical to obtain our overall stack height, I guess you could call it. That one hides right on the bottom. Now we test the infloat of the coupling. If I measured correctly, I should have 30 plus thousandths in play on everything. Oh yeah, I bet I'm 40. Very good. That's exactly how I wanted it. Yep. Nothing's binding, nothing's tight. Everything can get warm, expand a little bit. That will be just fine. Now that we have our floating coupling sorted, pump is back off, we move on to the final piece. It's a straight steel sleeve, and it's a light to moderate press fit into the step that is around that input seal on the pump. The earlier tractors just had this straight style, the later tractors had this style that belled out on the end, but where they press into the step on the pump was all the same size. And this was put in place, I believe, to act as a catch around this floating coupling. So if you were to take the hydraulic pump off and one of these pieces would fall out, this would be more liable to catch them before they could rattle down into the back of the tractor. But in our case, this also will act as a good backstop support against the back of the live power shaft bearing sleeve. So it will go in the back of the case there. The light's somewhat in the way because we have to see what we're doing, but it will surround the bearing nut and the lock and actually come up against the back of that bearing sleeve. And this is going to be a good in-play stop for any end thrust that's going to want to be pushing that shaft straight back. But just like with the floating coupling, I need to adjust the length of this because the prototype tractor is different, and I could put you through all kinds of tedious depth mic measurements and notes and some math, which I'm still not stellar at. But to cut right to the chase, I have concluded that if we take 0.148 off of the length of the sleeve, it should be a perfect stack up fit against the bearing sleeve in the tractor. That being said, I'm going to go a little bit further than 0.148 because I want to leave a little space to shim beneath this, just to make sure we don't exert too much pressure on that repaired area of the case. We don't want to break anything out. So you can use gasket material of varying thicknesses as shims beneath these. I've seen that on pumps before. Let's get that part done. That looks good. So I'm doing a test fit, no coupling and no gasket. What I want to do is just start it in by hand like that. I'll hold it with a couple of bolts. We aren't going to run anything down tight, but I want to use a feeler gauge between the pump and the case to see exactly what my standoff is once that sleeve, that spacer, has hit the bearing sleeve in there. So pays to be extra conservative when you're doing things like this because it needs to fit together just so. Okay, everything's in. I've got the 30 thousandths spade out because that is the gasket thickness before it compresses. And yes, we're just a little bit tighter than that. It won't go in. So let's see exactly where we are. And it's looking like 20 thousandths. There, we can see it. It's just the right drag between the case and the pump all the way around. So I had thought about going a little bit looser with that spacer, but I think I'm going to leave it right there because our gasket, once again, is 30 thousandths. We will get 3 to 5 thousandths compression of it. So that means we are going to be 5-ish thousandths off of the end of the bearing sleeve on the live power shaft, which I'm kind of all right with. It's going to act as a backstop, but yet it's not already in a tight position so that if everything should heat up and want to expand a little bit, everything, would start getting taxed. So I'm going to leave it right there. I'm making a call. So pump back off. We can throw the coupling in and reseal and put it in for good. Everything is ready. I like to put some grease on those splines for the floating coupling because inside this tube, they're not going to get a lot of splash from everything else moving around. So it just gives them a little extra lubrication. Now the trick is lining those splines up, especially that I've got everything covered in grease and I don't want to have to do this again. There, I think we got it. And the really long bolt, which I am ashamed to admit is not a Rockford, will come clean. See that? That's just a generic grade 5 hardware store bolt head. I don't have any Rockford bolts that are those are 5-inch, I think. It's listed in the parts book, but for some reason, it's always been tough for me to find the long Rockford bolts that go in that spot. And as I tightened the bolts, I did periodic test spins of the live power shaft and the clutch, and we did not have any change in rotation. So that means it all went together well. You can see we are right up against the bearing sleeve in the back. Let's see if I can zoom in for you all. Get a view of the mirror so we can see the other side. Yep, good view of it right there. We're so close to that bearing sleeve. If that wants to move rearward at all, we are on it. So that means we can throw that belt drive back in. We don't need to look in there or access that for anything anymore. And cover back on the top. And we can call her a day. And just like that, it's all broken back down again. What you see here is all ready for primer. So we are playing the waiting game with Mother Nature, waiting until we get some conditions that are right for spraying some paint outside. But I hope y'all can appreciate all these parts and pieces and how much work it took to get X231 to where you see it right now. Sealed up back end, ready for the painting process to begin. And it's just been, me frying my brain every day on this thing for at least the last 2 months, almost 3 now. Trying to overcome problem after problem after problem that didn't seem to have any solution to them. when I first started. So, all right, we've got it this far, but as you all should know by now, I am a sucker for full circle moments, and I've got one final piece that I've been saving for this entire time. It's the first piece that we ever touched on that back end. It's the drain plug that goes in the bottom of the rear casting that was so horribly broken and exploded, and this was the very first piece. We pulled this out, and that started the process. It's been all uphill battle from there, but I left all the mechanical carnage in it just so that we could just kind of have one last little go around, clean all that out. I think I see part of a clutch dog link in there, all kinds of shiny pieces of glitter. This is the last piece. Let's finish it up.